Hello, Joni Rotten here. I have an article I've been wanting to read for a while. I've mentioned it. I'm doing it now while I'm on, I'm grounded, okay? While I'm on restriction. My parents can't keep me from reading. So here's the time to do a great article I found not too long ago. This is called, Is Psychiatry for Sale? An examination of the influence of the pharmaceutical industry on academic and practical psychiatry by JOANNA MONCRIEFF, published June of 2003. That's why I found this article so interesting. This was prepared by a MAUDSLEY discussion paper and is available for £4 as a booklet from Sarah Smith at the Institute of Psychiatry, Crespigny Park, London, SE58AF. Telephone is 02078365454. Email sarahsmith@iop.kcl.ac.uk. Case you wanted to get a copy for only $4. I wonder if I could still do that. I wonder if I could just pay $4 and get a copy of this book. I might try it and see. I might just send them a check in the mail for $4. Okay, here's the summary. Western society is consuming even larger quantities of prescription drugs, and many of these are for psychiatric complaints. Drugs are central to modern psychiatric practice and to much psychiatric thought about the nature and causation of mental disorders. Psychiatry has therefore become an important target for the large and powerful pharmaceutical industry. Drug companies direct lavish advertising and hospitality towards psychiatrists and provide funding for much medical education and some mental health service initiatives. The industry is now heavily involved in the organization of research into psychiatric drugs and the dissemination of research findings. This raises questions about the scientific objectivity of this research and the extent to which the industry is able to shape the research agenda. Drug companies also provide funds for pro-drug patient and career groups and carer groups and address advertising or disease promotion campaigns to the general public. They exert influence at a political level through lobbying and direct funding of political bodies, including drug regulatory agencies. Find this interesting? Yes. This influence has helped to create and reinforce a narrow biological approach to the explanation and treatment of mental disorders and has led to the exclusion of alternative explanatory paradigms. The coercive function of psychiatry has been strengthened by promoting the idea that psychiatric disorders are akin to medical conditions and that they are amenable to technical solutions in the forms of drugs. In addition, alternative treatment approaches are neglected, and it is likely that drugs are currently used for overly long periods and in excessive doses. The adverse effects of drugs are neglected. Psychiatry provides fertile ground for pharmaceutical industry profits because it provides opportunity for expanding definitions of sickness to include more and more areas of social and personal difficulty. This paper gives examples of how the industry has been involved in promoting and expanding concepts such as depression, social phobia, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and psychosis. The current extent of drug company influence threatens the integrity of psychiatry, and some suggestions are made about steps that can be taken to address this. The influence of the industry may be curbed for political reasons too. We are rapidly becoming a society that seeks a pill for every ill, one that looks for simplistic technical solutions to complex social problems. This helps to divert attention away from the profound social and political changes that have occurred during the last few decades. Psychiatrists should not be colluding in this process. So, little background. The place of drug treatment in modern psychiatry. Drugs are the central focus of treatment in modern day psychiatry. The vast majority of psychiatric inpatients are prescribed at least one psychoactive drug, and many are on several. The same is true for only slightly smaller proportion of psychiatric outpatients, and many more people are prescribed psychoactive drugs, especially antidepressants and benzos in general practice. Furthermore, most patients who are prescribed psychiatric drugs are told to take them for a period of months, and maybe are told that they will need them for many years or even a life. Psychiatric textbooks devote large sections to drug treatment and related ergology theories, and psychiatric journals are filled with results of drug trials and related brain research. Almost all drugs in current use have been introduced into psychiatry since the 1950s. Although drug treatment was common before that time, with extensive use of barbiturates and other sedatives and some use of stimulants, it was rarely given much attention. This was because drugs were generally regarded as having only crude effects, usually acting as chemical forms of restraint. Broslow, 1997. However, from the 1950s, drug treatment came to be seen as an important and glamorous. The drugs were introduced from that time onward, came to be regarded as specific treatments for specific conditions, and became the basis for speculations about that etiology of mental illness. Sorry if I'm saying that word wrong. That comes from 1999. A vast research into possible abnormalities in transmitter and receptor systems were spawned, epitomized by the dopamine theory of schizophrenia and the monoamine theory of depression. The pharmaceutical industry undoubtedly played an important part in establishing drug treatment as central to psychiatry. It was involved from the beginning of the psychopharmacological era. For example, with the huge marketing campaign that helped to introduce chlordomazine or thorazine. I don't know much about these medicines, so I'm probably butchering these words, into America in the mid-1950s. That was from Swayze, 1974. The industry has been described as, quote, the ultimate force behind the adoption of new drugs such as and created with transforming psychiatry into a genuine and modern medical specialism. Recent developments over the last 10 to 15 years, psychiatric drugs have become much more widely prescribed and increasingly familiar to the general public. Drugs such as Prozac and Ritalin have become household names, and books about them have become bestsellers. Kramer from 1993 is an example. This is part of a more general increase in consumption of all types of medicines, indicated by the fact that prescriptions used increased by 56% between 1988 and 2001 in the United Kingdom. The average number of annual prescriptions per head of population increased from 8 to 12 in the same period. However, increases in the use of psychotropic drugs have contributed disproportionately to this increase, with prescriptions of antidepressants rising by 173% in the last 10 years between 1991 and 2001, and that came from the Department of Health in 2002. The rise in cost has been even more marked since the majority of the increases in prescribing have been for expensive new classes of psychiatric drugs, such as the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor called SSRI, antidepressants, and the atypical antipsychotics. In the United States, antidepressants are now the top-selling class of prescription drug, with antipsychotics, anti-anxiety agents, and stimulants also ranking highly and or showing rapid increasing sales. The National Institute of Healthcare Management, 2002. This increase in the prescribed drugs has been achieved firstly by extending the boundaries of well-recognized conditions like depression and psychosis. Secondly, Lesser known disorders such as panic disorders and social phobia have been publicized. And thirdly, drug treatment has started to colonize areas where it was previously thought to be unhelpful, such as substance misuse and personality disorder. All on the rise today, those things are. Influence of the pharmaceutical industry. Over the 20th century, pharmaceutical companies transformed themselves into small enterprises, often the offshoot of chemical companies, into some of the largest commercial concerns in the world. I love how they even use that term. They're the largest commercial concerns. By the beginning of the 21st century, they were making greater levels of profit than their counterparts in other commercial sectors. In 2001, U.S. pharmaceutical company profits averaged 18.5% of its revenue, compared by 22.2% of the rest of the Fortune 500 companies. That was from Fortune magazine, April of 2002. The pharmaceutical industry exerts its influence at many different levels. One, the medical profession. The medical profession is the industry's primary target. Routine marketing strategies include the provision of hospitality, which can vary from provision of lunchtime refreshments for local meetings to the financing of meals in expensive restaurants, or the provision of expenses paid trips to attract foreign locations for company presentations. When psychiatrists refuse to see company representatives, they may persuade other members of the mental health team to accept hospitality. The provision of small gifts to doctors, such as mugs, pens, books, and diaries, is also endemic. Drug company logos adorn many psychiatric offices and are encountered throughout psychiatric hospitals and wards. Basically, that's kind of like where, like, a college might give, a ball player a free car, food, an apartment. They may offer them some type of gift in order to join their school. And that's against the law in colleges. They cannot do that. However, hospital or doctors were able to do that for quite a while. It seems like, I remember I knew someone from school that had become a pharmaceutical representative. She told me that when that law came into effect, where she could no longer offer doctors incentives in that way, her income went down dramatically. However, she still made bank money. We're talking 3 nannies. Literally, she had 3 nannies. So that says a lot. One for every moment of the day the kids might be alone. Okay. Anyway. But they do have things like giving them, notepads and pens that the patients might sign in with, and lots of their little pamphlets and these types of things. So as the article goes on to say, many medical educational events, such as conferences, now receive substantial income from commercial sources. That I forgot to mention, the lunch thing. So they'll come in. I've actually been in the doctor's office at that time as a before lunch patient, while the pharmaceutical reps were coming in with their rolly carts and their clipboards and lunch from whatever local restaurant that they have gotten, and they're going to go into the lunchroom and do a presentation about why they should share this medicine and what good things it can do for their patients. And as I'm waiting to be seen, I can hear the entire office literally stop what they're doing to go and find out what's for lunch, say hi to the representative. They're all buddy-buddy. And I'm sitting there for another 15 minutes while I can hear them chewing on. And then they come into my room with with something in their mouth that they've just taken time off of my appointment to go in there to just see what their lunch is going to be like after I leave. It's gross and disgusting. Honestly, I don't know. Doctors treat their patients like crap, and then they wonder why people like me won't come see them, and then get mad because I won't come see them. I won't come see you because you're a jerk. All right. My medical education events. I did that many. In a recent article, respected American psychiatrist E. Fuller Torrey described the extravagant promotional methods employed by the Seven World Congress of Biological Psychiatry held in Berlin in 2001. Several drug companies constructed elaborate installations to attract delegates' attention. These included an artificial garden, a running stream, a 40-foot rotating tower, and a tent with costumed women offering fortune telling. The drug companies have also sponsored more than half of the conference's delegates, paying for airfares, accommodation, and entertainments, and paid fees of between $2,000 to $5,000 to the speakers at the numerous industry-sponsored symposia. In all, the conference was said to have cost the industry at least $10 million. This is not so extraordinary. The American Psychiatric Association and UK Royal College of Psychiatrists annual conferences have also come to resemble true fairs due to their prominence of drug company stands. So they're saying they spent how much? $10 million trying to get doctors, and here's the thing with that, is that what doctors may or may not even know is that, sure, they do a trial on rats, and then they've got to find, they go over to, South America and Central America and Africa, and they try a lot of their experimental drugs on those people over there. And then when they make it to the Western world, they're still on trials. That's what that varies, or whatever it is, side effects website was designed for. It was designed so that pharmaceutical companies could go in and find all the list of patients that are on their medications and weird, strange side effects that have happened to their patients while under certain medications. It's data gathering. And so the pharmaceutical companies want the doctors to prescribe this to everyone so they can find some side effects that a lot of people tend to share. And when they find that, then they use that as a way to sell you a future drug, such as dick pills. That's exactly what that caused. So the rats weren't getting boners. The Western doctored patients were getting boners. Do you see what I'm saying? So you are part of a trial. So these doctors are accepting these things, fortune telling. I mean, look at what they're doing even. They're not even doing like having, this is a waste of money. An artificial garden, that's a waste of money. Why are you not having more research into different ways of finding safer approaches to your ills and pills? Just asking. Seems a little, misplaced is all. It has been repeatedly shown that doctors' prescribing practices are influenced by interaction with industry representatives and attendance at drug company sponsored events. That was from JOANNA in 2000. The fact that the industry invests $15.7 billion in marketing in 2000. And it's in the United States, there's about one drug rep per 15 doctors. They have more drug rep per doctor than they do per student in school. Just let that sink in for a second. Also, indicates the importance of industry attaches to its marketing activities. Medical research. Organization of research. So in 1960s, large clinical trials were funded by the state funds through the NIMH in the United States and the MRC in the UK. At that time, there was a belief that the commercial sector should play only a limited role. That's by Healy, 2002. However, the industry now underwrites 70% of its research into drug treatments. That's by Bodenheimer at 2000. In addition, most drug trials in the United States are now conducted by commercial research organizations. called Contract Research Organizations, or CRO. These organizations have emerged recently and hire out their services to drug companies. Thomas Bodenheimer describes a situation in which hundreds of commercial research organizations, as well as academic medical centers and other independent non-academic sites, compete with each other for contracts to do industry-funded research. That was from Bodenheimer in 2000. Obviously, if the studies do not achieve desired results, the organization might jeopardize future contracts. In addition, payment is usually awarded accordingly to how many patients are entered into the trial, creating an incentive to stretch and expand diagnostic concepts. Evidence suggests that commercial research organizations conduct research more rapidly and more cheaply than academic medical centers. That was by Commonwealth Fund of 1999. And Bodenheimer, again in 2000, concluded that trials conducted in the commercial sector are heavily tipped towards industry interests. Gee, I wonder why. Contract research organizations have argued that they are heavily regulated and have to follow internationally agreed good clinical practice guidelines on an ethical and safe conduct of research. However, that was from Beach in 2001. However, a few years ago, figures revealed by one audit company suggesting that compliance with guidelines was frequently inadequate. That was from Ballyhock and Ball in 1999. Since audit results are not routinely published, it is impossible to know whether the situation has improved or not. A recent audit of 17 contract research organizations in Germany suggested quality was generally high, but 31 cases of significant deviations from good clinical practice guidelines were still found. That was Chase al. in 2001. In any case, it may be difficult to detect the subtle influences that commercial pressures have upon the research process. In the case of Borison and Diamond, who were psychiatrists who set up a contract research organization in the United States, revealed the huge profits that can be made in the business. They were convinced of defrauding the university when they were employed. They were convicted of defrauding the university when they were employed. The investigation revealed not only their huge personal wealth, but also that large bonuses were paid to staff who enrolled the most patients, and patients were also offered cash incentives. Although Borison and Diamond were not indicted for research fraud, revelations about the operation of their business sheds a worrying light on the conduct of trials in the current highly competitive climate. Borison was, incidentally, principal investor of two of the pivotal trials that led to the approval of the atypical psychiatric risperidone in the United States. See Whitaker 202, Chapter 11. At an individual level, links between academic doctors and the industry are proliferating and include payment for speaking at conferences, consultancy fees, payment for sitting on advisory boards or boards of directors, and holding equity in a company. That's from Boyd and Barrow 2000. A study of published papers found that 34% of primary authors had substantial financial interests in the work they published. Wadman of 1997. In psychiatry, the situation may be even worse. In 2000, the New England Journal of Medicine did not have space to print all the financial interests of the authors of a paper on antidepressant nefazidone and had great difficulty in identifying an academic psychiatrist to write an editorial on the subject who did not have financial ties with the company that made make antidepressants. Now, think about that. They literally conflict of interest. They had such a hard time finding a conflict of interest. It was also shown recently that 87% of authors in clinical practice guidelines have some interaction with pharmaceutical industry, and 38% had served as consultants or employees of the company. Despite this, only 4.5% of guidelines contained any declaration of the personal financial interests of authors. This is a cause of concern since guidelines usually command professional respect and have strong impact on practice. Research findings. Research findings can be affected both by the way a study is designed and by the way results are presented. The fact that drug firms now control most of the process of most clinical trials, from design and implementation through to data analysis and publication, is therefore a cause of concern for some commentators and researchers. This again, Bodenheim in 2000, Healy and Catella in Pro on Rini 1996. Lots of people have obviously seen these problems, and this was written in what, 2003? And we're here again. So no one is doing anything about it, even though they're screaming, which again, I kind of get it, because it seems like no matter how many times you say things, people still want to talk about someone else's crap. They don't even care. It was in a stream the other day, and like, look, you know, I'm absolutely loving this conversation, but my viewers just went from 50 to 12 because we stopped giving out about some other channel and we started talking about something interesting. That's the reality of the world. I'm ready to give up myself. I've just decided the whole world is stupid and the whole world wants to stay stupid. And those of us that don't, well, we're already doing the work anyway, so you don't need me to help you along. We all seem to be, I can find all this stuff myself. And just the fact that nobody else finds it as interesting as I do, well, that just shows the world is full of idiots. Okay. The design of studies in a particular issue of psychiatry where disorders are highly variable. I bet not even many, how many of you are, if you are still with me, listening to me, even if you're on super speed, don't care. That's great. I listen super speed. Leave a comment and say, I made it to, how many minutes in are we? I made it to 27 minutes in. I made it to the 30-minute mark, Joni, because I do find what you're saying interesting. That'll tell me how many people actually listened. I tell you this, write a code word in. Write somewhere in your comment the word coma therapy or coma. Write the word, it's not a coma. Write the word coma in your comment somewhere as a code that you made it to 30-minute mark. And that way I'll know. The design of studies is a particular issue in psychiatry where disorders are highly variable and in most cases wax and wane, meaning it is easy to be deceived about the benefits and interventions. The history of psychiatry is full of treatments that were thought to be effective scientific treatments, but turned out to be useless, not to mention harmful. That is an example in Whitaker 2002, chapter 4 on the history of insulin coma therapy. There it is. So are you in a coma? Right? They're deceived. I see this a lot too. This is what happens when you, these are people that get misdiagnosed. That's what this is called. And many times people who have genetic or rare disabilities, things that are now coming into the light because of the CV, and now everyone with rare genetic things are all of a sudden finding out that they have these rare genetic things because of side effects that are coming along with the loosey-goosey and the COVID-19 flu has brought to light, everything comes to the light, all of their weird, quirky. So and I've been saying this since February of 20, you're going to see mast cell activation syndrome. So MECAS, M-C-A-C-A-S. You're going to see POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and orthostatic syndromes showing up, which we've seen a lot of that, but get ready for more of them. That includes vertigo, dizziness, fainting spells. There's literally so many more, but just those right there have no cure for them. There's no cure. They have no medicines that even work. So why do you think the pharmaceutical industry being set to be not really that important soon because they're running out of patents? They've basically got a pill for everything now. So they need new illnesses to find and do experiments with. They have created an illness that now everyone has side effects that up until this moment had no treatment. What are the odds? That's a designed weapon. That's a direct designed weapon just against you and whatever weird, like the Bible says, two in the field, one disappears and one doesn't. That's what, I'm not saying that this is that. I'm saying that that sentence right there in the Bible is repeated over and over again in several different aspects of our world. One of them being that one person got COVID and had no side effects, and another person got COVID and can't breathe anymore or eat anymore, or is dead, or has now, huge histamine reactions and anaphylactic and dizzy spells and vertigo and consistent, visual auras, migraines, all of these different things that up until this point, ironically, had no cures for, had no medications to combat. I don't think I can be any clearer what I think COVID-19 has been, was, and always was since the very first time I brought to light a video on it. Back in February, maybe it was March. I think it was March of 2020. March of 2020, I had already been calling out the direct hit on DNA, on certain people of certain races that were having adverse effects. The fact that they were trying to get the old people, the minorities, that's the poor, the blacks, the Asians, the Hispanics, a bunch of farmers were losing their minority immigrant workers in Washington and California because they're like, I'm not getting jabbed, I'll go back to Mexico. That was all happening right there because they knew they were being experimented on. But of course, once it hits to the next level, which I say like middle class, suburbia, all those people are the fearful ones, and they don't want to live poor. They don't want to live broke. They don't, they won't lose a job because they don't want to lose their house. Where somebody who never had anything to start with has a much better ability to just say, no, I won't do it. And what happened in these two states with their farming, you can go back. I'm sure you could probably, maybe you can't find articles on it. I don't know. Things are disappearing off the internet. More and more things are disappearing off the internet. Totally believe in the fake internet story theory, because I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen things that were there, and I've researched them. I've done videos on them, and I've done this, and I've done that, and I can go back and look for the article on Forbes, type it in verbatim because I have the video of where I recorded it, and it is gone, not there anymore. So I've seen it. It's just so confusing right now. Clearly, I think these things need to go. The computers, I think that they're literally in real time. So that misdiagnosis harms people. And all the way back in 2003, they were already pointing light to that. And then what was being written? More articles. I've been reading them. I'll keep reading them. Articles about how the pharmaceutical company was suggested that it was going to be outed and it wouldn't be in fashion anymore. And they were going to have to do some major changes if they were going to stay relevant in the future. If they had a future in investing in pharmaceuticals, they needed to come up with something radical. And they created COVID-19, herpes virus, type family virus that comes in through the back door of Epstein-Barr, which is in 95% of the population. Each person with a genetic makeup has a different reaction, a different side effect, a different expression of that. Some were fine, some were not. And then they continued to get more and more and more. And now you see, as time is going on, what those side effects were leading to. Doubling of miscarriages in Australia. It just came out this week. Doubling of miscarriages. So twice as many babies didn't make it to term than did the previous year. That seems interesting to me. And you can't deny that, Dot. What changed from 2022 to 2023? What changed? A lot of these women might not have even been pregnant when they got the loosey juicy, or been pregnant when they got sick with the COVID, but then became pregnant later, and look what happened. And because miscarriage is just a normal day of women's lives, it's not until they start telling each other, it's not until somebody starts saying, hey, oh my God, right? Some women don't even go to the doctor when they have a miscarriage. It's not even reported. It's just written down as a check mark in a file and nobody even knows about it. That's the known miscarriages. Imagine how many more never even made it. I find that stuff freaking interesting as hell. I'll keep going on I got off on a tangent, but you know me. I'll go back here. So we have misdiagnosis. We have misprescriptions or prescribing things for people that they do not have, which causes side effects and alters to their DNA. If you stub your toe, your DNA alters. Go look it up. You can have trauma on the mind. The body and the mind cannot tell the difference. So trauma on the mind and trauma on the physical body have changes in the makeup, changes in the chemistry of the body. So we can see this most visually through PTSD, which causes physical panic attacks based off of an emotional response. And the body works just like that. So every time they give you some experimental drug, the mind and the body cannot tell the difference. It feels threatened and it reacts with an expression that shows that threatening. And that's what these side effects end up being. When the body has a near-death experience, rather real or perceived, it has a change in its chemistry. You know that for a fact. You can't argue with it because, as I've said, we see it through PTSD as our most prominent example of how that is expressed. Although there is a consensus in psychiatric drugs, including antidepressants, antipsychotics, and mood stabilizers, stabilizers are effective and useful. Problems with the design of studies means that questions remain about the reliability of some of the evidence based on this consensus. In antidepressant trials, problems such as subjectivity of outcome measures and unblinding have led several authors to conclude that their efficacy, for crying out loud, efficacy. Is that it? Efficacy. There it is. I knew my brain was going to find it. I'm like, I get so mad. I'm like, I know that word. Okay, now you're just irritating me that you, my tongue, cannot say that word. Efficacy. Woot woot is not firmly established. And here we've got some more, references to that. It has been suggested that the apparent benefits of atypical antipsychotics in relation to side effects were partly a result of comparison with high doses of standard drugs, which were popular at the time the atypicals were first introduced. In addition, studies of long-term treatment have neglected the possibility that withdrawal-related problems in people who stop drugs may inflate the apparent benefits of drugs such as lithium and antipsychotics. The results of studies can be presented in a number of ways to give an exaggerated view of drug benefits. These include failure to publish negative results. So why would they do that? Of course they do that. I would do that. I'm not, if I had no guilt, I would absolutely not tell you. I do that now. I'm not going to tell anyone that I did that. That was a stupid thing I just did and nobody saw, and therefore I'm not even going to mention it. The use of multi-outcome measures and selective presentation of ones that are positive, multiple publications of positive study results, and the exclusions of subjects from the analysis. For example, one review of a psychotropic drug trials reported that hundreds of significant tests were conducted and that 50% of trials excluded subjects from that analysis. 50% of the trials excluded those subjects from analysis. So they only get a good, because they're making money off of having funding, and they only get funding when they have positive results. We don't live in the old time of science, right? Where everyone was fighting to be the first, and rich people wanted to be the first. We're now just money. I need more money. Lawyers aren't driven to win anymore. They're driven for money. So you don't find lawyers too often who, will take a case because they might lose just because they're challenged to try to win it. Nope. If it's a no lose and there's the degree to how they think they could win it is low enough, they won't bother. So people that really have cases that should be helped get completely either looked over. Some piece of crap lawyer who has no, can't even get his pants on straight coming in the courtroom. That's what we're talking about here. These problems are not confined to studies conducted by the pharmaceutical industry, but it seems likely that commercial pressures may increase the risk of methodological biases and misleading reporting. In Bodenheimer's investigation, 6 out of 12 clinical investigators he interviewed reported cases in which publication of papers had been blocked or even content of papers altered by a drug firm. Peter Brennan's analysis of the FDA files claimed that several negative studies of Prozac were not published and that some published trials did not report negative outcomes. In 1995. So how many more children and adults were injured? I just know that Prozac, was something that was often prescribed for teenagers. So how many people were harmed back when they were teenagers who are today seeing the side effects of that harm? In recent review because they didn't report negative outcomes. So even when they give me a little piece of paper that says, I'm taking this medicine, I understand that it could cause blah, 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 blah. They actually might not have one of the things it could cause. Again, another reason why they're pushing biometric systems, because if they can know your DNA, they can prescribe you medications that are, designer. So they may go, hey, Prozac's not going to work with you because you have this blank, blank, blankety blank receptor. However, we have another medicine that will work with you because you have this blankety blank, blank receptor. Well, the problem with that is that they can do the opposite now. If they know my receptor, they can literally prescribe me a medicine, or pharmacists could refill something for me, or, maybe, whatever that would cause me to die, be sick. I don't know. Because honestly, people start falling over dead. It's because genetically they can't deal with what they've just been given. So that means they can do that to anyone if they know what you couldn't deal with. If I knew that, look, people do it all the time when they poison someone with something they're allergic to. Okay. And they put peanuts in the stew. And the husband has no idea he's been poisoned. That's what I'm saying. If they can keep it away from you, oh no, we can never give you peanuts because you could die. They can also specifically target you. The author describes the importance of the use of inappropriate doses of comparator drugs, use of questionable definitions of outcomes, and the selection of major findings and the endpoints post hoc, HOC, the masking of unfavorable side effects, duplicate publication, emphasizing favorable but not statistically significant differences, withholding unfavorable results, and masking sponsorships. And they do that. We know they do that. So if the government does it, if the school does it, the doctors do it. Let's be real. Indirect evidence that drug company sponsorship affects trial quality is the finding that studies sponsored by drug companies are more likely to find evidence in favor of the sponsor's product rather than studies that do not have commercial sponsorship. Research conducted in the 1980s found that 43% of trials that favored a new therapy were sponsored, compared with 13% that favored the standard therapy or a placebo. That was from Davidson, 1986. A recent study found that authors' conclusions were more likely to be favorable towards an intervention where the study was fully funded by a for-profit organization than where funding came from other sources. Drug company sponsorship was associated with greater apparent benefit from the company's drugs and trials of clopazine or clozapine and antidepressants. So I'm going to stop there. The research agenda. We'll read that next. Let's find out what the research agenda might be. It's 1 hour. If you want to come listen to another hour of this sad paper that has been, lost in the sea of Google, I'll keep reading it. Link 2 is in the description. Don't listen to me read it. I'm a horrible reader and I can't read words very quickly. And plus, I didn't memorize it before. It's literally the first time I've read through it. I only skimmed. So, this is raw. But I do find it interesting and worth finishing to read. So don't listen to me. Go read it yourself. Go read it yourself. And if you're a much better reader or have one of those things that can change the voice, then upload it that way. Do that. Share it. That's a great idea. Anyway, that is, that's how I see things. Bye.